Thank you for tuning in to the little bonus video. My name is Evelyn. I will walk you through how I made the cuff for these little pins here. So the way that the designer had originally written the pattern is you cast on an X number of stitches, you knit a certain amount of rows, you purl one row to make a nice neat edge to fold it over, and then you start knitting the body of the pants. When the pants are finished, you come back, you fold this over, and you slip stitch or mattress stitch this cast on edge into place. But what happens is that no matter how careful you are or how careful you sew this in, you will disturb that fabric because your tension is not ever the same when you sew something in a pre-knitted garment. So what I decided to do is that I wanted to knit this together. So number one, I didn't really have to sew it in, which I like anyways, because then you don't have to match stitch for stitch to sew it in. You just knit those bits together, and because they are the same, they're knitted together, they have the same tension and therefore do not disturb the fabric at all. I want to talk about what we need for a provisional cast on and what it actually is and what you would use it for. So usually for a provisional cast on, you need 2 different knitting needles. Usually they have a cord on them because it makes it easier to knit off the cord, and I will show you why that is. In my case, I like to have a thinner needle, and I would like to have a thicker needle. The thicker needle usually sets the gauge, whatever your pattern is called for. The thinner needle I like because it makes my secondary stitches smaller. The provisional cast on, that just means that you have actually live stitches on this needle and live stitches on this needle. So normally we just cast on, there is nothing live on the bottom, it's a clean edge, and we just knit in one direction. If we have a provisional cast on, it means that we have live stitches on 2 needles, which gives us the opportunity that we can actually knit in both directions. So we can knit in the round and have a start out here without it having a without you having to close any seams, because the stitches grow out of both sides. So for toe up socks where you need a toe box, that's perfect. If you want to have a wraparound, a folded over anything, this is perfect because you have live stitches on both sides. If you want to knit a pocket in somewhere, you have both stitches that you can fold it up and maybe have an I-cord on this side, and so that you can have a kangaroo pocket, or it doesn't matter what kind of a pocket, and then you knit the tops together. You can use this for all kinds of things. Traditionally it is used in, if you want to have a double collar so that you get more structure on the collar. Like in the last few years, like the collars are single, so they're kind of a little bit flimsy, but if you were to have a double collar, it would stand on its own. It has more a tailored look to it. You can use it for cuffs on the sleeves if you don't want to have the traditional ripped cuff, even though you can use a provisional cast on and rib if you would like. You can use it as a hem for the bottom of a sweater or a hem for the top of a pant. In our case, in my case, it was the top of a pant where an elastic was pulled through. So I'm going to show you how we use this. In knitting, there is a lot of things to remember. So the provisional cast on, I like to keep fairly easy. The only thing that I need to remember is that my lead needle is in the top. I start off with a slip knot and I slip it on the bottom needle. I cinch it, and I'm going to start wrapping. So if it says, in example, for the toe up socks, you would use 8, cast on 8 stitches. You would cast on 8 stitches, because it'll be for the top you get 8 and for the bottom you get 8, so you'd have 16 altogether. In my case, I just want to duplicate what is on the top so that I can knit them off together. So I'm going to go for 15 stitches. I'm going to wrap it a few times, and you can wrap this hundreds of oops, that was a wrong tail. You can wrap this hundreds of times. However, what I do find is if you wrap it a lot, make sure that your wraps stay flat beside each other, that you don't bunch them up on top of one another. Then it gets kind of hard when you need to pull this bottom needle out. So just give me a second and I will show you what I mean. I want to have 15 stitches, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. But let's say I'm not really sure. I counted it 10 times and I'm supposed to have 300 stitches, and I come up with something different all the time. You can wrap this as many times as you want and give it extras. The extras will just stay on the cable in the back. I will show you how that works, and they'll just fall off. It doesn't matter. It just gives you a longer tail. So the bottom needle here, I have 2 needles right now. I will pull my yarn between the 2 needles to secure it for a minute while I'm holding it, and I will pull my bottom needle out in a manner, not that it frees up the stitches. If you did that, then you need to do it over. You need to pull it out in a manner so that all of your stitches stay on the cord. And then I just grab my other needle and I start knitting, because I don't pay attention if I wrap from the front to the back or from the back to the front, or if my needle tail is on this side, on the right hand side, or on the left hand side. Sometimes my stitches are mounted backwards, but that's okay because I can see that they are mounted backwards. So normally my right leg is, my leading leg is in the front. Now my leading leg is in the back, and I know this because if I were to go in this way here to knit off my stitch, I would twist it like the letter E, and then I would actually close off this bottom, and stitches are not twisted in the bottom. So I know I need to knit from the back. So I'm going to knit my 15 stitches, and I'll just go through the back. It's the first row only that I need to fix, and I don't really need to fix it because I can just untwist it as I go through the back. Let me see how many I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. In my case, it actually doesn't matter how many stitches I cast on, because I just use it to show you what I want to do. So right now I have this many too many stitches, not a big deal. I want to drop them. So normally, in order to keep the live stitches going, I would pull them this way so that the stitches are all on the cord, but I don't want to keep these live stitches. I'm going to drop them off. They coil right around one cord, which means that they're pretty useless as a stitch. There's nothing that you can do with them. And as I knit, they'll just completely unwrap themselves. So we don't actually need to worry about it. I will turn my work. My lead needle is still in the top, which is where I want it. And I'm working a row of purl stitches, which is my number 2. And I can just knit off the purls. The first and the last stitch, because they're just wrapped and they're kind of wrapped tight once you get going on here. They might be a little bit tight to get in there. So just take your time and make sure that you're not splitting your stitches as you go along. Even though if you do, it's not a big deal. You can always go back and unsplit that stitch or loosen it for you to get in a little bit better. Let's see if it shows on the end, or because I'm showing it, it'll be rather easy. Okay, so this stitch, yep, was kind of easy to get into. So here my first and my second row is done. My lead needle stays in the top all the time, and now I can knit however many rows that I want before I get to the fold over row, and I will show you that in a second as well. I changed the needles for them to be short straight needles just because it is easier to manage them on the camera as the cords get in my way. The tripod is right here. You can see the little leg over here actually. So I knitted the required amount of stitches on the bottom of the purl row, and on the top of the purl row the rows are the same. I'm going to fold this in half, and it wants to fold in half. It's almost as if this purl row here gave it the perfect break line. I'm going to knit into this stitch here, and I'm going to knit into the back stitch here, and that stitch is often a little tight as it is the last stitch of that Turkish cast on, which is a whole bunch of wraps. So now we can we knitted them together and we can drop them off the needle. So here I knit this guy, and I knit this guy, and I knit them together and drop both of them off the needle. And I'm going to follow this all the way, all the way to the last stitch. And it is easier sometimes to do them one stitch at a time instead of grabbing both of them. You can get quite fast, not if you're hugging a tripod and looking through the camera, but if you're doing it by yourself, you can get quite a bit of speed up here. So what I want you to note is that I'm on the knit side, so I'm knitting this guy, and I'm on the purl side here, but I'm still knitting him together because it'll be stockinette going on from here on up, so I can just knit them together. I don't need to purl them together. Now if this would be a garter, I would purl it together. Again, I'm hugging a tripod here and looking through the camera lens, but you get the idea. Okay, and I lost the needle in the last stitch, so here we are, and pop it over. So now all of this is knitted together, and you can see how seamless this stitch really is. I will knit a couple of rows and then I'll show it to you again just to see, for you to see how this looks. So here you go. I knitted a few rows, and as you can see, it is very seamless. quite pretty. This could be the bottom of a dress or whatever it is that you want it to be. I do want to demonstrate one additional way of how you can use this decorative edge. Same again with a provisional cast on, a number of rows. This is called a Picot edge. So we're going to knit 1, yarn over, knit 2 together, 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 oops, yarn over, knit 2 together. These are my last 2. Knit 1, knit 2 together. This is how it looks in the front of your work. I've knitted the required amount of rows. This is how it looks like. There's this lacy effect in here. Once we fold it together, the cuff, brim, or whichever casing will look like this. So again, we'll just knit these together. And even though the purl side is presented here, I will knit them together. The one thing that's left on the needle is the slip stitch from the first row. I'm going to get rid of this. And here it is. It is now knitted and purled together. This is how the edge looks. I have now knitted a few rows, and to show you how undisturbed this fabric actually is on the outside. And on the inside, this is what it looks like. So you could see this as an edging of anything. This is a Garter Ridge Picot. So knit 1. Yarn over. Knit 2 together. This is what it looks like in the Garter Ridge on the second row above. What happens if I feel I wanted to make the cuff or the casing in one color, but the rest of it is either going to be in stripes or in a different color? You can just take a different color here. And knit them together in 2 different colors. Again, this here is the first one that's got a good twist on it. There he is. Okay. So here you have it. This is the Stockinette in the 2 colors. It has a garter ridge. So here are the 4 different edges for dresses or mittens or pants or cuffs or whatever you would like for them to be. We have 1 and 2 color. With a purl ridge. Very nice. Lovely. The Picot edge in the Stockinette. And the Picot edge in the Garter ridge. This is the inside. So on the Garter ridge, it just peeks out a little tiny bit. So this could be the yarn over and the knit 2 together. It could be done in a cream or in a lovely dusty blue, or made to look very vintagey, or just surprise, I'm here kind of thing. So here are the 4 different ones. You can have a little look. And let me know in the comments if you like them, or what you would use them for, or if there's anything that you want to learn or anything that you have a question about. And until we meet again, this is Evelyn of the Modern Needle. So stay crafty.